Sunshine Beach is that luxury suburb, but the growth out there over the last 25 years has been that 12.576%. Over the last 10 years, it's grown at 13.5%, which is absolutely phenomenal. The suburb itself is a beautiful, quiet little spot up there on the Sunshine Coast. It's far enough away from Noosa that you're not getting the overflow of all the posers and the Instagram guys and everything like that want to be sort of seen and look like they're famous and everything like that. But it's still close enough that if you want to get down to Hastings Street and enjoy that lifestyle, or you want to go and be on Noosa Beach, or you want to go through, in a sense, the Noosa National Park. So the awesome thing about Sunshine Beach is you've got the back entrance to get into Noosa National Park, so you don't have to worry about trying to fight every other man and his dog, all the hippies that are camping out in their lime green vans, and the surfers and everything like that in and around the Noosa National Park where the car park is. You can walk up to Hell's Gate, which is a really nice little inlet. It's a V inlet within Noosa National Park, and it's got some really picturesque sort of views from there. If you are sort of loving, in a sense, that picturesque side of things, you know, you get that from that Noosa National Park, and you get that from getting into Hell's Gate. That, for me, reminds me of a spot where I grew up and I used to go once a year, which was over at North Stradbroke Island, and it's at Point Lookout, and they've got a similar sort of thing with a nice gorge walk around it, and it's absolute picturesque. So it's an absolute awesome spot to have a look at and sort of be immersed in that area. So if you love the beach, you love that natural bushland, you want to still be close to the glitz and the glamour, Sunshine Beach is really where it's at. And yeah, from what we were saying at the beginning, that growth has just been amazing over the last 25 years. So I don't see it slowing down. I just see it becoming more desirable and becoming more expensive. And even if it drops down to a 10% growth rate, you know, your medium home in that area is about $3.375 million. So, you know, even if it drops to a 10% growth rate, you're looking at around about 330,000 increase in that value compounding. So even if that growth rate slows, you're still going to get really, really good capital appreciation over time. I wouldn't say it was completely private. You still get a lot of holiday makers. There's still a lot of Airbnb in the area. There is still that vibe of holiday and everything like that, but it's a lot less than what's at Noosa. There's a lot less accommodation than what's at Noosa. And most people only stay there because they can't get into Noosa, and then they commute or they walk across. So it's about a 20-minute walk to walk from Sunshine, sort of around the edge of Noosa National Park, back into Hastings Street, so you don't have to worry or fight with all that sort of traffic and travel. Well, it comes down to each person's budget and what they're sort of looking for and everything like that. And then it's more drilling down into having a conversation with them and working out what the most important things are for them and their family. Okay, so if they want a property with water views and they've got, say, a $3.5 million budget, I'd be looking at 2 and 3 bedroom units, depending on the location within Sunshine Beach. Because of the water view, you're not really going to get a house for $3.5 million. If you want those cracking houses with the water views, you're going to have to up the budget a fair bit. You're going to have to be looking at, you know, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15, $20 million. Here's one of those ones that I'm talking about that you're sort of looking at around about an $18 to $20 million sort of price tag. But just check out that view. Like, how nice would that be to wake up and call home? You know, you're going to have the budget, but, well, there's the beach. You know, that's that pool area and that deck. So you're going to have the budget for that property. But if you just want the location and you don't need, you know, absolute waterfront property, then, and you want a house, then yeah, there's stuff in there for that sort of $3.5 million budget that you can secure, it's not going to have the water view. It is going to be a bit of a short walk down to the water, but it's a short walk rather than a short drive. Yeah. It is having those conversations with the clients. It is letting them know that, you know, sometimes their dream, as great as I am at my job, is not always a reality. You know, we're not going to be able to go and get a $20 million property for $2 million because someone who's been able to afford $20 million for that property is not going to go, yeah, that's a great deal. I'll sell my house that I paid $20 million for to you for $2 million. So it's showing the client what the sales are in that area, having those conversations with them, explaining what the market is doing, explaining the desirability of that market. There is big money in that area and there is a bit of exclusivity in that area, and you're paying for that. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for, you know, the connectivity to Noosa National Park, which is there, Hastings Street, which is just over here, and that's where all the, you know, the glitz and the glamour is and everything like that. And that's where all those sort of upmarket shops are. You're paying to have a great little coffee shop. Mine just down basically near the main street. If you want somewhere where it's a little bit cheaper, a little bit more friendlier to hang out, where you don't have to feel like you have to dress up to the nines, you've got the Sunshine Beach Surf Lifesavers Club, which is a great little spot to go and get, you know, a decent feed for a reasonable price. So it's really looking at that lifestyle of that area and what that sort of factor is. And, you know, if you're buying a house up in one of these back streets, you're not getting any water views or anything like that, you know, that walk from here down to the beach is not that far. It might be a 10-minute walk, but it's a walk rather than a drive. So you don't have to worry about loading all the kids up in the car and then driving down to the beach. You can just load up the trailer and sort of have them ride or walk behind you or walk down to the beach, have that fun, and then, you know, drag them up the hill to take them home for a nap. Well, as any parent knows, and as a father of 2 young boys myself, his wife working on number 3 at the moment, loading up the car with the kids, trying to drag them down to the beachfront, doing all those sorts of things can be a bit stressful and a bit painful. And then when you do finally get to the beach, trying to find that car parking spot, you know, the kids are wanting to get out, so they're all super excited, but there doesn't seem to be any car parks, where if you can just sort of load up the trolley, throw a couple of things on the shoulder and walk them down to the beach, it just makes that life so much easier. And that excitement that they get where they're sort of kicking and screaming and jumping all around in the back seat of the car, they're able to do that as they're walking down the road. So they're burning off that energy. So, you know, mum and dad, when they get home, hopefully, and have some lunch, the little monsters might have a nap and you guys get to sort of, you know, just relax, take a breath. So this one here just sold just recently. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1-car garage unit, and it sold for 1.415. Okay. So, you know, the view of the beach is not really, you can't see the beach, but you can still see the ocean. And the townhouse itself, or the unit, is not too far away from the beach. So once again, you still got that walk down to the water. You're not one of the waterfront sort of properties, but you've got access just down over to the side here. So you can come down that street there, if you can see the mouse, and then down that way. Or you can come down this street down to where the surf club is and out to the water. And then Noosa National Park is just up here. Okay. And look, yes, it could do with a bit of a reno. Yes, you could argue that it's a bit small, but if this is your budget, this is the sort of thing that you could be looking at, okay? If you were to do a quick little cosmetic renovation on that, pump in 60, you know, tidy up the kitchen, tidy up the bathroom, give it a bit of paint and carpet, you're going to have something that's going to be quite substantial. And the other thing too is it is that sort of 2-bedroom, like as in 2-story style. So you do have that more lifestyle area where you can see a better view of the water, where you've got the dining and the lounge, and the master bedroom still gets a decent view for where it is. And the cost is not over the top at that sort of bracket. If you're looking more for a house, I would be looking towards the back blocks of that sort of Sunshine Beach, or potentially moving over into Sunrise, which is the other side of David Low Way, where it's a little bit cheaper. It does mean that you're going to have to take that short potential car ride down to the waterfront, or it is going to be a good 20-minute walk. And as every parent knows, tired kids need to be carried, and that can be rather difficult if you've got a whole heap of stuff coming back from the beach. But you've still got beach access within that area. So you've got, you know, down this area down here, and you've also got some access points along here, and that sort of thing. You're not going to get the surf lifesaving like you are at Sunshine. So you've got the surf lifesaving tower at Sunshine, but you know, if you're more looking to just play in the sand rather than go swimming in the ocean, you know, Sunrise Beach is another viable option. That's a little bit cheaper. You've got David Low Way, which is that sort of major coastal run along there. So David Low Way isn't a highway, but it's not your quite suburban street. Back in the past life when I used to be a rep, which is over a decade ago now, actually I don't really want to admit how long ago it was now because that scares me of how old I'm getting. Once a month I'd see some customers in and around Noosaville sort of area, and then after I've seen those customers, once a month I would actually stop, have some lunch at Sunshine Beach, find a little spot, pull up, eat some lunch, look out at the water, and then I'd take a nice sort of tourist drive down David Low Way because it's absolutely spectacular. There's different parts along here where you go around the bend and you come up over this little rise and all you see is the Pacific Ocean, and you just sit there and go, wow, how amazing and gorgeous is this coastline. So you're not really going to Noosa National Park for picnic grounds and that sort of thing. You can potentially set up at the beaches for food. The actual park itself I wouldn't, because you probably get a goanna come out and try and steal your lunch. So I'd do it at the beaches. But, you know, you've got a couple of different access points into the parkland. So you've got this bushwalk, which will take you down in and around. And that bushwalk can actually feed down and take you to Hastings Street quite easily. You've got the other way of coming up through and then over to this northern side where there's a lot of different beaches and pockets and lookouts and stuff like that. And then you've got the access to get basically from Sunshine up through over to Alexandra Bay. There's one spot of Noosa National Park. It's really, really beautiful, but if you come in through the back way, you can be a little bit daunting because I don't know if you can really see it on this photo, but that's a staircase that takes you all the way up to that mountain peak. So I'll see if I can step it out a little bit and maybe move down and sort of show you. And, you know, my wife and I were planning to do it one day, and we came in, and the young fella was still young, and we just sort of looked at each other and went, yeah, this is a bad idea. There's that. Here's that. See the stairs? So don't get me wrong, it's great, but, you know, with young kids, the back entrance can be a little bit more trickier. If you love bushwalking and you love soaking in nature, it does add, because it's such a clean and picturesque part of the bushland. So if you love that stuff and you really love going for a bushwalk, it does add that lifestyle factor. If you're not so keen on going bushwalking and stuff like that, 100%, it doesn't add a huge amount of that. But if you love going through the bushland, potentially seeing a snake or a goanna or something like that, obviously not playing with them, but, you know, taking a couple of pictures, being respectful to the animal and keeping your distance, yeah, it's absolutely picturesque. It would come down to what are their needs. So for me, it always comes back to, what are you looking for? Are we looking for an investment property? And then what's your budget? What sort of returns are you looking for? What sort of rent and everything like that? Are you looking for a beachside property? If so, what does that budget look like, and what do you need? Do you need, a 4 or 5 bedroom house? I need a 5 bedroom house. I've got 3 teenagers, my wife and I, and even though we're going to be on holidays, I'm still running my business. I still got to have a room so I can set up and do meetings and stuff like that. I might only be working 2 hours or 3 hours a day, but I still need to be able to have that space. So I really need that sort of 5th bedroom or a study area where I can close the door and shut off. And, ideally we want 2 living areas because of the teenage kids, and they can have their space and we can have our space. So it comes down to, what is it that they're looking for? So with a $4 million budget within the example that you just sort of gave, I probably wouldn't be looking at sunshine, purely because to get the really nice stuff in there, you're probably up around about that sort of $6, $7, $8, $9 million. And that's for the really nice stuff that you're going to get that sort of thing. If you're spending $4 million and I'm getting you something that doesn't have water views, you're going to sit there scratching your head going, it's not quite what I really wanted. Where if we come just down the coastline a little bit, we could potentially go into Marcus Beach. There'd be some stuff closer to the water along here that you're potentially going to get some ocean views. But I'd almost go a little bit further down, come into Coolum Beach. Really great little spot just in there. And then you've got this hillside through here, and you're able to get some decent quality homes that are going to have those ocean views for around about that $4 million. And while we continue talking about sort of Coolum and Coolum Beach and what that sort of looks like, just going to have a quick look at realestate.com and see if I can find something to show us a bit of an example. But I'll explain the other reason why is a short drive from here, even Point Arkwright, we'd potentially look in there. Short drive from there, you've got Coolum National Park. And Coolum National Park has got some really beautiful stuff. So if you like bushwalking and stuff like that, that's a mountain. Like, how can you go wrong with that view? So if you're liking that nature side of things, for that sort of $4 million budget, I would be having a look there, than over suggesting Sunshine Beach. Yeah, this is something, this sold for $4.5 million, October last year. So it might be a little bit outside the budget and everything like that. But this is the kind of thing that you're getting for $4.5 million. Something of this quality in Sunshine Beach is going to set you back a fair chunk of change. For me, Sunshine Beach is that sort of hidden gem of that Noosa Regional Council. Everyone, when they think of Noosa, they're thinking of Noosa Heads, they're thinking of Noosaville and buying in and around the canal and everything like that. They might be even thinking of Doonan and some of the hinterland and the bigger properties out in this area here. And Doonan is just down here. So they, potentially thinking of those more sort of inland, hinterland suburbs. Everyone wants to be at Noosa Heads. That's where all the Instagram followers go to and those influencers and everything like that. And then the spot everybody wants to sort of be seen on is the main drag, which is Hastings Street. That's that spot where you've got, the luxury shops and you've got the 5-star hotel. Look at that from a leafy green, boutique little dress shops and stuff like that all in around there for it. And then you've got stuff that's a little bit more mainstream. At night time, it's quite picturesque along here because there's quite a lot of the trees that have got lighting all through it and they light up. There's beautiful restaurants, food, etc. So Hastings is that sort of touristy area, where Sunshine is a little bit more off to the side. It's at the back of Noosa National Park, so it's not the main entrance of where the car parking all is, and it's all geared up and set up. So the car parking for Noosa National Park is in here, and it's a decent sized car parking area in and around that. Then you've got all the beaches and everything like that. Sunshine's just that more sort of local feel. You know, if you know about it, you know about it. And if you don't, you're probably seeing this for the first time and wondering where it is and what it's got. It's got great beach access across there. You've got a surf lifesaving club as well as surf lifesaving set up on the beach. You've got entrance to Noosa National Park if that is what something you really love, and the beautiful views in around there at the back of it. You've got great little cafes and a great little strip. Mine is a great spot to go and get a coffee. And there's a few others, you know, Sunshine Social Roasters, etc., etc. And then if you want a cheaper feed without having to dial up and have all the glitz and glamour, you've got the Sunshine Beach Surf Club, which is a great spot to get a good feed. And then, you know, if you want to go out and have that sort of 5-star luxury, you're about a 7-minute drive to Hastings Street where all that stuff is. Betty's Burger, funnily enough, their actual first shop was on Hastings Street. Their first shop is that one right there. And then from there, they've grown out and sort of become a little bit of a dominant player in that sort of more upmarket burger style of thing.